I never thought I'd be one of those guys who ends up catching his wife cheating. I knew she was a little difficult. Bethany has always been a bit of a bitch about everything, especially when it comes to her image or her pride. But I never really suspected she'd do something like this. We've been together for 5 years, and honestly, I thought we had a decent relationship, even if it wasn't perfect. We had our issues, sure, but who does? It all started about a week before the wedding. Bethany was acting a little weird, but I figured that was just her nerves. She'd be snap crying on the phone, then smiling the next minute like everything was fine. She'd cancel plans at the last second, and I remember thinking she was just stressed out. I didn't push her because I thought she'd come around, and honestly, I was too focused on making sure everything was perfect for the big day. But looking back, I realize now she was probably hiding something. The wedding rehearsal dinner was supposed to be a low-key thing. Just the close family, some friends, and of course the best man, Jake. Jake, been my best friend since high school, and I trusted him more than anyone. Bethany pretended to be sweet and charming that night, but I caught her sneaking glances at Jake more than once. I brushed it off at the time, thinking she was just nervous or maybe didn't want to be there. She's always been a little bitchy when she's uncomfortable, so it wasn't unusual for her to be prickly. But then came the weirdest part. After the dinner, everyone was winding down, and I decided to call it a night early. I headed back to the hotel where Bethany and I had booked a room for the night. When I got there, I noticed her phone was lying face down on the nightstand, and she was already in bed, pretending to sleep when I knocked. I figured nothing of it, but I did notice her phone screen lit up with a message from Jake. It was just a quick "see you tomorrow, bro," so I didn't think much. Still, I stored that away, thinking maybe I was just overthinking it. The real shock came the next morning. I was getting ready for the wedding, tying my tie when I decided to check her phone. It's not like I was planning to do anything sneaky. I just wanted to see if she'd been texting anyone weird. When I unlocked it, I found a string of messages between her and Jake that didn't sit right. They were flirtatious, suggestive even, and I swear they were more than just friends messing around. I read one where Jake said something about how Bethany felt so good last night, and she responded with some excuse about how she was just nervous and he was a good friend. Lies, all lies. I felt my stomach drop. My hands were trembling. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife, my soon-to-be wife, was cheating on me probably for a while now. And Jake, my best man, the guy I trusted with my life, he was in on it. That's when everything turned upside down. I couldn't sleep that night, replaying every moment, every suspicious glance she'd thrown at Jake, every little thing that seemed off. It was like the whole foundation of my marriage was collapsing before my eyes. The worst part, I didn't even have the full story yet. I just had this stupid gut feeling and now undeniable proof. I knew I needed to confront her but didn't know how. I was furious, heartbroken, and honestly feeling so stupid for not seeing it sooner. All those signs, her being bitchy, her lying about where she was, the phone always hidden, everything clicked into place now. I could hear her snoring softly in the bed, pretending to sleep, probably trying to act innocent. But I knew better. I didn't want to wake her up and start a fight right then. I needed to think, to plan. How do you confront someone when you've just found out the person you trusted most in the world has been lying and sneaking around? How do you even process the fact that the woman you're about to marry has been screwing around with your best man behind your back? It was like my whole universe was crashing down around me, and all I could think about was how betrayed I felt, how stupid I felt for not seeing it coming, and how I was going to make her pay for this. The day of the wedding was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, but it turned into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I woke up early, still trembling from what I'd uncovered the night before, and I kept staring at her, Bethany, my fiancée, lying there pretending to sleep. I kept asking myself if I'd missed all the signs, if I'd been blind to what was going on under my nose. The truth was, I had always known she was difficult, but I never suspected she'd be capable of this kind of betrayal. I thought maybe she was just a little bitchy, maybe manipulative sometimes, but not a cheater. Not with my best friend. I sat there for a long time, staring at her, feeling this mix of rage, hurt, and confusion swirling inside me. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it in front of everyone. I needed to do it right privately. So I pretended to get ready, trying to keep my hand from trembling as I put on my suit. All the while, my mind was racing. I kept going over those messages, replaying them, trying to figure out how she'd lied so well, how she'd managed to hide that part of herself from me. When I finally managed to get her alone, I pulled her aside into the quiet of the hotel room's bathroom. I looked her straight in the eyes and asked her who she'd been texting so intensely last night. Her reaction was instant, defensive, bitchy, and full of lies. She rolled her eyes, told me I was being paranoid, that I was just jealous and insecure, that I was imagining things. But I didn't believe her. I showed her the messages on my phone and her face just froze. She tried to deny everything, but I knew better. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the panic. She started with her usual bullshit. Said Jake was just helping with the seating chart, that I was reading too much into it, that I was overreacting because I was nervous about the wedding. She said they never did anything, that it was just harmless flirting, that she never was unfaithful. I couldn't even look at her. The words felt like vomit coming up my throat. I asked her how she could lie to me like that, how she could betray me so blatantly. She shrugged, threw her hands up, and spat out that I was just being paranoid, that I was insecure, that she deserved better than a jealous husband who can't trust his wife. I felt my blood boiling. How could she be so cold, so manipulative? I wanted to scream, to shake her, to tell her how much she'd hurt me, but I didn't. Instead, I just looked at her and said, "You're done. I can't do this anymore." I told her I saw everything, that I knew she'd been screwing around with Jake, and that I wasn't going to stay with someone who lied to me like this, especially not on the day I was supposed to marry her. Her face twisted into this snarling, bitchy expression, like she thought she could fake her way out of it, like she was better than me for catching her in her lies. She tried to deny it again, said I was imagining things, accused me of being jealous and insecure, that she was tired of my accusations, tired of being accused of things she hadn't done. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was too angry, too hurt. I told her to pack her things, that I was done, that I wouldn't marry her, not after she'd betrayed me like this. And that's when she snapped. She started yelling at me, calling me all sorts of names, saying I was controlling, paranoid, a loser who couldn't keep his wife happy. Right then, I realized I couldn't stay with her, not after this. Not after finding out she'd cheated with my best man, after seeing the lies and the betrayal in her eyes. I told her to get out of the hotel room, that I didn't want to see her again. She stormed out, leaving her bags behind, and I just stood there, trembling with rage and heartbreak. It was the worst feeling I've ever experienced, knowing that the person I trusted most in the world had been screwing around behind my back, and I hadn't even suspected it until that moment. I spent the rest of the day alone, trying to process what had happened. The wedding was canceled. My friends and family didn't understand what was going on, but I didn't care. All I could think about was how I'd been played, how Bethany had lied and manipulated me for her own selfish reasons. I kept replaying her words, her lies, trying to find some explanation that made sense, but there was none. Just betrayal, pure, cold betrayal. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew I couldn't stay with her. Not after this. After Bethany left, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. The room was empty, but my mind was flooded with everything that had happened. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. How I had missed all the signs, how I'd trusted her so blindly when she was out there screwing my best man. That bastard Jake. I thought about their stupid hotel room, how I'd seen her ring on the dresser like some sick trophy, as if that piece of jewelry somehow made it all okay. The whole day was a blur of confusion, anger, and heartbreak. I stayed in that hotel room for a while, just sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the open door she'd left behind. I kept thinking about what I'd say to her if I ever saw her again. How I'd tear her apart with words, how I'd remind her of every lie, every sneer, every moment she'd turned into someone I didn't recognize. She was a bitch, a manipulative, selfish bitch, and I'd never trust her again. That was clear. But part of me also felt this deep ache, an ache that I was losing the woman I thought I knew, the woman I was supposed to marry. The thing I didn't expect was how quickly everything spiraled. My phone buzzed in my pocket, an unknown number. I hesitated, then finally answered. It was Jake. His voice was all smug, like he didn't even care I'd found out. He started with some bullshit about how it's just sex, how I shouldn't be so paranoid, how Bethany wanted it. I could hear his voice crack with arrogance. That's when I realized I'd been played by both of them. I'd trusted Jake, my best friend, and I'd married Bethany, the woman I thought loved me. And now I was left with nothing but a mess I didn't know how to clean up. I told Jake to fuck off, that I knew what he'd been doing, and that I wasn't going to let him get away with it. But his reply just made me angrier. Something about how Bethany was hotter than my wife, and how he'd been waiting for a chance to screw her. That was it. That was the icing on the cake. Did I think I knew my best friend? Clearly not. I had trusted him with everything, and he'd stabbed me in the back like some selfish bastard. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of nausea and rage. I knew I couldn't stay in that hotel room, not anymore. I packed up my stuff, feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I left the hotel, the cold air hitting my face as I stepped outside. I didn't know where to go, what to do, or even how to feel. All I knew was that I had to get away from her, from Jake, from everything that reminded me of the betrayal. I drove around for hours, trying to figure out my next move, trying to think clearly for once. Meanwhile, Bethany was already spinning her lies. I got a few texts from her, mostly bitchy accusations, saying I was crazy, that she hadn't done anything, that I was just jealous because I couldn't handle her. She played the victim, of course, twisting everything around to make herself look innocent. I knew she was lying, but that didn't make it hurt any less. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest repeatedly, like I'd lost part of myself in that hotel room, in those messages, in her betrayal. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, trying not to drown in the feelings of betrayal and heartbreak. The worst part, I wasn't even sure if I wanted her back. A tiny part of me still wanted to believe she'd come clean, that she'd apologize, that she'd be honest for once. But deep down, I knew that was wishful thinking. She lied too much, manipulated me too deeply. And now all I could do was try to pick up the pieces, try to understand how someone I loved could do this to me. I spent the next few days trying to piece everything together, replaying every conversation, every glance, every sign I'd missed. I kept asking myself why she'd do it, why she'd betray me with my best friend, why she'd lie so easily, why she'd throw away 5 years of trust over some stupid, fleeting sex. I wasn't sure I'd ever get a real answer, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to decide whether I was going to stay and try to forgive her, or cut her out of my life for good. The pain was too much to ignore, and honestly, I was leaning toward cutting her loose. I didn't deserve that kind of betrayal, and I wasn't going to let her ruin me. The days that followed were a blur of confusion, anger, and an almost sick sense of numbness. I couldn't focus on anything. Every time I tried to think about what I'd do next, my mind kept circling back to the images of her lying to me, the messages from Jake, the way her face twisted when I confronted her. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I had been so blind to someone I loved. The trust I'd built up over 5 years felt like it had been shattered in an instant, and no matter how much I tried to piece it back together, the cracks just kept spreading. I remember one night, I was sitting on my couch, trying to watch TV but could barely keep my eyes on the screen, when I got a call. It was my cousin, Mark. He had no idea what was going on, but I guess he'd caught wind of the chaos. When I answered, I could hear the concern in his voice. I told him everything about Bethany, Jake, the messages, the hotel room. I told him I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, like I'd been played for a fool. Mark listened patiently, then finally said something that stuck with me. "You gotta do what's best for you. You deserve better than this. You don't owe her anything. If she really loved you, she wouldn't have done this. Plain and simple." That was the first time someone outside of my own head really told me I deserved to be happy, even if it meant walking away from everything I thought I knew. It hurt, but it also gave me some clarity. I knew I couldn't stay with Bethany anymore, not after what she'd done. The betrayal had cut too deep. Every time I thought about trying to forgive her, I remembered how cold and bitchy she'd been when I called her out, how she lied so easily, how she threw her own integrity away for a quick thrill. I realized I was better off without her. I decided I'd have to cut her loose, no matter how much it hurt. I wanted to move on to find some kind of peace, even if it meant starting from scratch. The night I finally decided to tell her it was over was the hardest. I reached out to her, told her I wanted to meet. She was her usual bitchy self, throwing blame and trying to turn everything around on me. She told me I was overreacting, that I was insecure and crazy. But I didn't care anymore. I looked her in the eye and told her that I knew everything, that I was done pretending, that she'd ruined us, and I wasn't willing to fight for a relationship built on lies and betrayal. She tried to act like she was the victim, crying and saying I was the one who was controlling, jealous, paranoid. She even said she'd do whatever it took to fix things if I'd just give her a chance. But I saw through her. I saw the bitchiness behind her tears, how she was trying to manipulate me, how she was still lying. I told her that I didn't want to see her again and that I was done, that I was tired of her lies, her games, her manipulations. I told her to leave and never come back. When she finally stormed out, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I was finally free from her toxicity, but sadness because I'd lost someone I'd loved. It was like losing a part of myself. I sat alone in my apartment that night, staring at the emptiness where she'd been just hours before. I kept asking myself why I'd let her get so close, why I'd been so blind. But deep down, I knew I'd done everything I could. She'd betrayed me and I had no choice but to move on. Over the next few weeks, things got quieter. I avoided my phone, avoided the places I used to go with her. I threw out her things, deleted her number, and tried to rebuild my life. I started going to therapy, trying to understand how I'd let someone manipulate me so badly, how I'd been so naive. The pain was immense, but I kept telling myself I'd heal. Time would make it better. I had to remind myself that I deserved someone who loved me for who I was, not someone who lied and cheated behind my back. Looking back now, I realize how much I've grown through all of this. I learned that trust isn't something to take for granted, that people can betray you in the worst ways, and that sometimes you have to walk away from what's toxic, even if it hurts like hell. I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought, and that revenge, in my case, was just about finally taking control and not letting her ruin me. It's a long road ahead, but I know now I'll be okay, better without her. It's been a few months since I kicked her out and cut her out of my life, and honestly, it's been a roller coaster. Some days I wake up feeling like I'm finally free, like I've taken back some control. Other days I'm flooded with memories, her bitchy face, the lies, the betrayal, and I wonder if I'll ever really get over it. But here's the thing I've realized. Healing takes time and I can't rush it. What I can do is focus on myself, rebuild what I lost, and learn to trust again, even if it's hard. One thing I did was go back to basics. I started exercising regularly, hitting the gym every morning. It gave me something to focus on besides the pain. I also started seeing a therapist, something I should have done from the start. It's helped me process the anger and betrayal, and I've learned how to forgive myself for trusting her so blindly. I've come to accept that maybe I was naive, but I can't change the past. All I can do is move forward. I also reached out to some of my old friends, people who knew Bethany and Jake, and I told them what happened. It was awkward at first, but I needed to get it all out. The support helped more than I expected. Some told me I was better off without her, that she was a manipulative bitch who played me for a fool. Others just listened, offering words of encouragement. I realized I wasn't alone in this. Plenty of guys have gone through similar betrayals, and that made me feel a little stronger. The biggest change, though, was how I started to view relationships now. I used to think I'd be with Bethany forever, that she was the one. But I was wrong. I learned that no matter how much you think you know someone, people can surprise you in the worst way. Trust is fragile and it takes time to rebuild after it's broken. I've decided I won't rush into anything new right away. I need to heal, to find out what I want, and to get comfortable being alone again. That said, I've also realized I'm not as broken as I thought I was. I've survived something terrible and I've come out the other side stronger. The betrayal hurt like hell, but it also taught me to be more cautious, more guarded. I don't want to be that naive guy who gets blindsided again. I want to be smarter, more aware of red flags, and more honest with myself about what I need from a partner. Most importantly, I've learned that revenge in my case was about reclaiming my dignity. I didn't want to sit around angry forever, waiting for her to apologize or admit she was wrong. I decided to take control and move on with my life on my own terms. That meant cutting her out completely, deleting all the messages, her number, everything that reminded me of her lies. I took her stuff out of my place and blocked her on social media. It was painful, but I knew it was necessary. Now I'm just trying to focus on what's next. I've started dating again, cautiously. I'm not rushing into anything serious, but I'm open to meeting someone who's honest and respectful. I guess what I want to say to anyone reading this, if you're in a similar situation, is don't be afraid to walk away. Don't stay in a toxic relationship just because you're afraid of being alone. Trust your gut, stand up for yourself, and remember that you deserve better. It hurts now, but someday you'll look back and be grateful you didn't settle for someone who lied and betrayed you. You're stronger than you think. And I promise, life will eventually get better. Looking back, I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where everything I believed in was turned upside down so suddenly. It's like 1 second, you're planning a future with someone, trusting them with your heart, and the next, you're standing in the ruins of that life, feeling like you've been played for a fool. The betrayal by Bethany and Jake was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, but it also became my wake-up call. It forced me to confront my own naivety and to realize that sometimes love isn't enough. Trust is everything, and if that's broken, nothing can be fixed until you rebuild from the ground up. I learned that revenge isn't about hurting others for the sake of revenge. It's about reclaiming your dignity, your self-respect, and your peace of mind. For me, that meant cutting her completely out of my life, deleting her from my world, and focusing on healing myself. I had to accept that some people are just not worth the effort, that they're toxic and manipulative, and that the best thing you can do is walk away and never look back. The experience also taught me to value myself more. I've realized I don't need someone who lies, cheats, or manipulates to feel whole. I don't need the drama or the lies. What I need is honesty, respect, and someone who genuinely cares about me, not just someone who pretends to. And I know now I'll never settle for less. I've started to rebuild my confidence, to trust again, and to remind myself that I am worth more than the betrayal I endured. To anyone out there going through something similar, I want to say this: it hurts, yeah. It feels like your world is crashing down and you'll never get past it, but you will. Time helps. Distance helps. And most importantly, you have to remind yourself that your happiness depends on you, not on someone who lies and cheats. You have the power to walk away from toxicity, to cut out what's hurting you, and to find someone who actually deserves your trust. Now I focus on the future. I don't dwell on the past. I don't let her betrayal define me. Instead, I see it as a lesson, a harsh but necessary lesson about who to trust and what I deserve. I've learned that nobody is perfect, but some people are just not worth the effort if they're going to lie, cheat, and manipulate. I've finally accepted that I'm better without her, that I am enough just as I am. And from here on, I choose to live honestly, openly, and with hope that someday I'll find someone who truly respects and values me, not because I need validation, but because I finally believe I do.